People in their 40s and 50s with no children, how does it feel? Story 1, I never once had the tingling feeling of wanting to become a parent. I simply don't have that want/desire/responsibility to raise a child, especially in this timeline we're living in. Then I met my wife, who thinks the exact same way. We both love traveling, backpacking, camping, etc. It's freeing knowing we can get up in a split second and go. Story 2, honestly sort of sad but not overwhelming. I was always ambivalent about having kids. I would have been up for it if my partner wanted them, but he didn't, and I was totally fine not having them. I still don't feel strongly about it, but that partner and I broke up a few years back, and now that I'm in my early 40s, it's just very weird to realize that, well, that window is probably closed. I mean, as far as I know, I could still get pregnant, but my current partner and I aren't in a place to be looking at that, and since we'd really have to try, now I'm accepting that it's just not going to happen. So yeah, there's some kind of grief, but it's a weird sort of grief, because I never actively wanted kids and was always perfectly comfortable with the idea of not having them. It's more grief over losing the potential of having them in the future, I guess. Edit. Since so many people have said, why not just adopt? I'll add that I am adopted, closed infant adoption. And though I love being adopted, for many reasons I explain in this comment thread, have always known I would never myself adopt. Everyone is aware of adoption as an option, but it's a unique journey that should be chosen on its own merits, and not every person is suited to be an adoptive parent. And also, I still don't actively want kids. Story 3. It's weird, BC, all your child-having friends, which is most everyone, are completely consumed by their kids, so you don't relate as well with others. But also it's great, BC, I have extra money and I can spend it on whatever the F*** I please. Oh, and I have extra time to do whatever I please. But sometimes I want to do something with my best friend, but she can't BC of her kids, so there's positives and negatives. Story 4. For a while, I was a fence sitter. It wasn't until 30 that I realized it was even a choice, and not an inevitability. In U.S. culture, marriage and children are a common life script. It took time for me to acknowledge that that script isn't a good fit for me, and it didn't solidify until my late 30s. For a while, it was money and security, as well as environmental concerns and overpopulation. But it was also simply a lack of real desire to be a parent. I've often wished we could live multiple lives so that we can try all the things, but in this life, I don't really want children. That was hard for me to grapple with in some ways because I was blessed with great parents, and my mother was a fantastically caring role model. But my biggest reason for thinking about parenthood was fear of regret. That's not enough. Parents should really want their children. This is a whole other human being you're bringing into this world. They deserve to be wanted and loved and properly cared for. You're responsible for them, and it might not turn out roses. Parental anxiety doesn't magically dissipate after 18 years either. For the rest of your life, you are a parent. There are also a lot of physical things that can go wrong with pregnancy, especially the pregnant person, which are not talked about enough. Our society holds a very rose-colored glasses view of pregnancy as glowing and natural. It really messes with people's bodies, not to mention postpartum mental health. A lot of folks will argue that not having children is selfish. This is puzzling because those same folks will say in the next breath that having children ensures you won't die lonely. If you need to be a parent because that feels like your destiny and you are full of love, that's one thing. But if you're having children to safeguard your own future, now that is selfish. Not to mention the resources impact on the planet, etc., etc. If you are unhappy, parenthood won't fix it. If you are lonely, parenthood won't fix it. If you're following a life script in a daze, trying to check all the right boxes, take a moment to examine your reasons. If you want to be a parent, that's great. Best of love and luck. It's possible to live a comfortable life full of love, while doing what you want, while taking time to give back to your community, while staying open and curious, and generally living a good life, without adding parenthood into the mix. Story 5. I wanted to have kids, but I couldn't. So sometimes I'm a bit sad seeing friends and colleagues having children. But it's nothing I can change, so I'm usually not thinking much about it. And sometimes I'm also a bit glad I don't have kids seeing how the world goes to, and no one seems to care to make the necessary changes so that their children or grandchildren will still have a livable world. Story 6. Can't believe there are people claiming child-free people don't care for the state of the only planet we call home. Of course we care. We have nephews, nieces, and family that will have kids that we care about deeply. I wasn't even going to comment because I'm only 34 without kids, but you weirdos with your assumptions can be annoying. Not having kids is amazing for some and sad for others. Story 7. Hard. I feel like I missed out on the best parts of adulthood. First steps, taking my kid to school, coaching little league, school plays, dinner table conversations, family vacations, helping them when they are hurt, Santa Claus, seeing them grow, arguments and apologies, grandchildren. It just never materialized for me. It's like I wasn't worthy of that gift, of even finding a wife to build a family. Sucks hard many days. I can put on a brave face, but deep down it's crushing. M48, one sister who also has no kids? Story 8. As someone who has wanted to have children but has fertility issues, it's been soul-crushing. Yeah, I have freedom, but the only thing worse than being disappointed myself is watching my wife struggle. Having and raising kids is all she's ever wanted, and I have been unable to give her that. Hoping to adopt, but it's an incredibly lonely and vulnerable experience, especially if you aren't willing to go through a religious agency. Story 9. I wanted children, but my uterus decided that ejecting them would be a better idea. I sometimes grieve the idea of being a parent. Then I snap back to reality when the reality of my life makes me not fit to be a parent. I am on the disability pension for MS. I am legally blind and cannot drive and have to depend on others to do things for me. I could not provide what I feel is a fulfilling life for a child. I get to sleep in, I get to love my cats and be the weird aunt to my nibblings instead. It is what it is and I am at peace with it. Story 10. I never wanted kids. It was worst nightmare to have them. I did everything I could to avoid them and I'm very happy to have done so. Now I just need my work to respect my off time and my life will be perfect. I have more spending power than everyone I know and I can do whatever I like and whenever I want. You could not pay me enough to have made the other choice. Story 11. I have the freedom and funds to take off for a few weeks to travel anywhere in the world when I feel like it. Did do that a few times already and it was an experience every time. Or if I feel like it, do nothing at all. I can do whatever I want and that's priceless to me. Would my life be better or worse with kids? Hard to say TBH, but the freedom alone I have right now makes me feel like it's better than not. Story 12. Pretty rough. I only started to feel better and come out of the sadness when I took full responsibility for choosing not to have children. My first partner didn't want kids until he was 40. My first husband was abusive and irresponsible. My boyfriends after that were non-committal. My second husband is amazing but has kids, had the snip, and felt he was too old to adopt or foster. The reality is, I chose these partners. I've got lovely adult stepchildren and I'm an auntie and godmother. I've fostered rescue animals for 20 years. It's not the same, but you can't always get what you want, as the song goes. When I have feelings about it, I have to take it on the chin. Story 13. I'm happy. I love sleeping in late on Saturday mornings, not driving to tons of kids' sporting events, never have to stand on the sidelines in the cold and rain, cheering on kids, driving to kids' party after kids' party every weekend. I often hear parents moan about preparing school lunches, which is not an issue. Honestly, as a child, I never ever dreamed of being a mother. I never played with dolls, ever. I never envisioned a time where I would have kids. I grew up in a very noisy house with way too many people crammed into a small space. My many siblings quickly had lots of kids as well. I've been surrounded by kids and spent a lot of my life looking after other people, cleaning, cooking, and being a general dog's body. I just don't want to do that anymore. I go on decent holidays. I'm free at the weekends. I love the peace and quiet. I'm very happy in my own company, and I have a very limited social battery. I don't believe I would have made a good parent. I do like kids, but I feel I've sacrificed enough of my life looking after other people, and I'm happy as I am. Story 14. I'm not supposed to answer this question. 32M, still on the fence. These answers make me happy for the people responding, but sad for society. We've improved the world in so many ways, but made having children a major burden. A society with an inverted population pyramid is unprecedented and worrisome. Honestly, makes me more likely to want kids. Story 15. Lonely and sad. I have a son somewhere. Many years ago, I was dating a woman who dumped me when she got pregnant and gave up the baby. I only found out about the baby because I got sent mail I wasn't supposed to get. The adoption was final, and I couldn't afford a lawyer, had no rights. I can only hope they look me up someday. Worst part is most of the children in my family are suffering serious genetic problems, so I don't even know if he's okay. Story 16, I guess it feels normal? Weird question. It's not like a status or switch control. I suppose it was a good call. I would not have been a proper parent and totally unqualified to raise humans. Many say otherwise, but I know deep down I would just suck. I'm surprised so many other people are having kids, and I now understand why the world is the way it is, because parents are failing them and really shouldn't be raising children. Story 17. It sucks. Kids open up a lot of things you simply miss out on if you never had them. Going to Disney World or a theme park or even major fairs, the beach, seeing families with their kids having a good time, birthday parties, the thrills of school activities, holidays. You get old, your friends get old, your parents pass on. Everything feels a little bit hollow. Yeah, you also pass on a lot of stress, problems, heartache, headaches, financial issues, But in life, you take the good with the bad, and you realize you gave up a lot of good after it's too late to do anything about it. And aging alone has zero upside to it, none, nada. Story 18. The few years I was a parent were enough to teach me I don't want kids. As much as I loved my stepkids, I do not miss the constant never-ending panic. I was always anxious. Living in poverty, I just knew I was failing them. I lived in a low-grade state of anxiety for 5 years, worrying about them all the time. I still worry about them all the time. In fact, one is currently sleeping downstairs. She's homeless. It's so much different now that they are adults. Story 20. I'm not sure how to answer this because I don't know what it would be like to have them. I see all my friends and siblings with kids, and I see the beautiful parts. I also see the very hard parts. I also see the people who really want children do everything they can to conceive. I just can't ever picture putting myself through that. I do know this. I love my life. Every aspect of it. I love seeing my nieces and nephews grow up. I love that I can come home and have peace and quiet and not have a single thing to attend to. I'm truly happy. This is what I wanted, and it's what I got. But will I ever know how it feels opposed to having them? Nope. Story 21. I wanted kids. It didn't happen. It sucks not to have had that opportunity. I sometimes get caught up in some existential dread thinking about the fact that my genetic lineage stops with me and I'm leaving nothing behind as a legacy. But on the flip side, I know having kids would have been hell. Even as a kid, I understood that to have kids, I'd have to be okay with being a single parent, as even today it seems men continue to demonstrate an inability to take equal responsibility for raising their kids. As a disabled person, it's hard enough to survive and advocate for myself without dragging a child into poverty. To advocate for them, my kids would likely be disabled too. I see friends struggling to get their SN kids access to even basic education, and I'm glad I don't deal with that. I get to do what I want with my money and my time. I get to rest in plenty of alone time, which I'm grateful for. I feel bitter about no opportunity, but also glad. Story 22. Never really wanted kids or understood why people have them. But now in my late 40s, I realize that children serve as a distraction from your own existential crises. As mortality and other fears slowly become more prominent, children and their youthful energy make life more interesting and worth living. If all you have around you is aging and decay, life gets very boring and depressing. Story 23. Amazing. Just got back from a month-long work trip to the EU, heading to Vegas next week, then Texas for fun. Had a spur-of-the-moment drive to spend the weekend with another child-free couple in their cabin adjacent to a national park. We drank, cooked, and built a huge fire. My biggest problem before work tomorrow is working up the energy to bring some plants in because there's a frost advisory tonight. Story 24. In my early 60s, I love not having kids. Happy for my friends that have children, but I don't for a second envy them. My GF has an adult daughter, and there's still tons of stress there. Same for my younger friends with younger kids. I know they love them and would choose the exact same path, but so would I. Story 25. I'm in mid-40s. People that are similar in age around me have mostly not yet teenage kids, some even toddlers/babies. As much as I have spent a second or two earlier in life thinking that it would be great to parent this hypothetical dream child, but we all know having kids is kind of a crapshoot as to what you'd get. I'm sincerely so glad I'm not one of these overstressed, self-neglecting due to lack of time, energy, full-time working, but also carrying 90% of caregiving and chores, married, mothers around me because I'd want to shoot myself. Story 26. I know there's a lot of child-free folks here by choice, and I imagine most are happy. The people who I know that don't have kids at this age, my cohort, but wanted them badly are pretty sad about it. Some have made their peace, but it can be an unfulfilled dream for others. It all depends on perspective. Story 27. I'm 45. My sister 40 has 3 kids, and my brother 46 has 2. They're pretty happy, and I am as well. I like kids, but knew I would not have family support to help me, nor a job that would adequately support a family, and didn't have the right partner during those childbirthing years. All those things would have driven me into poverty if I had kids. Thankfully, I never wanted kids. My life never felt like it would fit. I like my nieces and nephews and my friends' kids. I like spending time with them, but relieved it's not me. Story 28. 40s dink here. On Thursday, we decided we'd spend the weekend visiting a bunch of wineries. 30 minutes to research online, booked a hotel, left immediately after work on Friday, and made it happen. Now we're back home Sunday night, sitting on the couch watching some horror movies while drinking stuff we picked up. Work week starts again tomorrow, and I'll wake up 15 minutes before I need to leave. Probably slightly hungover. No regrets. Story 29. Well, a decade older than you're asking for, but it feels great. No hassles in our lives. Our time is our own. We have plenty of money. That doesn't mean life is perfect. In fact, we still work, although we don't have to. But we need the health insurance, and we are quite isolated. Part of that was because we moved to a new state where we didn't know anybody. But also part of it is because it's a lot easier to make friends when you have kids or have a job that you go to. We both work from home, but we wouldn't trade it. And we never once have wished we had kids, especially me, the one who would have had them LOL. I've known my entire life I didn't want kids and nothing has changed. Story 30. I love my life. Thanks for asking. I am married. My husband never wanted kids and I was neutral. Because I don't have kids, I have the time and freedom to nurture a number of important relationships in my life, not least of all my nieces and nephews and close friends' kids. I travel frequently, have a career I'm passionate about, hobbies, this year it's watercoloring, and am financially secure. I know that I could have many of these things with kids, but definitely not all of them, and there's nothing I would give up about my life today. Story 31. Both somewhat sad, but also somewhat freeing. One of the main reasons I didn't feel I was stable enough and didn't want a kid to experience some of what I did growing up. But now I have more money and have settled down more than I ever expected. Pets are a great substitute conduit for that lost aspect in life. The only drawback is their short lifespans create a lot of pain along the way. Story 32. Pretty great. We get to stay up late, sleep in, travel, eat whatever, however we want. Not that people with kids don't do those things, but we don't have to negotiate who gets to sleep in or try to balance several different palates every time we make a meal. We live in close proximity to my sister's kids, and the neighbor kids call us auntie and uncle too. It's great to be kid adjacent, a trusted adult in their orbits watching them grow and sending them home. We are great at parenting in small doses, like 72 hours. And love having a silent home to recover in after we send them back. Story 3344, male single. It only hit me this year that I might possibly never have kids. It hit me, but I'm still sort of in denial at the same time. I don't want to accept that fate. I always thought I'd be a father one day, just never knew when. I've had a rough year, but I've poured more time into improving myself. Got fit, lost a lot of weight, started new hobbies. The dating apps did more harm than good, so got rid of those. I just can't meet anyone. I have money and time. Pretty much everything in my life is set financially. I just feel empty, like life is just passing by as I search for deeper meaning. It's not that I feel kids would give me purpose, because that's a tie reason to have a kid. It's that I feel like my purpose isn't being fulfilled. I've always liked kids and have always been good with them. I've always had a close bond with my nieces and nephew. I was just a guy who always felt kids were in my future. Even as a kid, I'd say things like, when I have a kid, underscore, 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 or when I'm a dad, underscore, underscore, underscore. I just never realized how much time passed. And I feel like those first few years of my underscore 40s were robbed by COVID. And I feel like it took until this year for me to sort of come out of the brain fog of that era. The thought of never becoming a dad really pains me. I hope it's not too late. Money, time, travel, etc. hasn't brought me lasting happiness. I crave a deeper connection with a SO and kids one day. Story 34, late here, but whatever. I never wanted kids. I was always upfront about it. I met up, I knew it. No, I would perpetuate bull and wasn't equipped. Met my now husband at 19. I always told him that. He knew where I was coming from. I got pregnant a few weeks after we met. I had an abortion. He was fully supportive. We got married. Years passed. Finally, in our mid-30s, he changed his mind. Straight up. Suddenly, he wanted kids, and I guess thought I would too eventually. Spoiler, I didn't. Never had. It is the closest we have ever come to splitting up. I had to sit him down and say, I get it. If you need kids to feel fulfilled in this life, that's understandable. But if that's the case, I'll give you a fast, uncontested divorce because it won't be with me and you've got to make a choice between having kids or being with me. It's been 10 years since then, more or less. I don't have realistic regrets. I'm the weird aunt. I enjoy other people's babies and children and then I give them back. As time has gone on, I definitely wonder if I made the right call. I could have taken another path. But I also know what a horrific up I was, and I am not sad I didn't inflict my genes and psyche on a small, innocent life. I am bipolar with a strong history of schizophrenia in my family and was a heroin addict for decades. Long story, but my husband never was, and I still can't believe he stuck it out with me until I got clean 8 years ago. No child deserved me as a mother. Story 35. I am early 50s. Children just didn't happen for me, unfortunately. As with most things in life, feelings change around this. For the most part, I am content and at peace with it all. There are times, however, when I look forward and all I can see is loss. I don't mean that to sound depressing. I think for people with children, for the most part, and in the usual course of events, the loss we experience as adults in middle age to old age, parents, friends, etc., is tempered with the milestones that children go through. School, college, becoming adults, and then having their own children. This balances the loss, Life takes on new patterns, new firsts, new joys, always something to keep you looking forward. Without children, I sometimes feel that balance is lost. I think this hit me when a parent was critically ill. The realization that for me, in the ordinary course of events, if the same thing happens to me at their age, I will likely be experiencing it alone. In other ways, I also think that there is freedom of sorts. As many have pointed out on here, children often bring vast amounts of worry and stress well into their own adulthood. Your heart is always at much greater risk of being ripped to pieces. I am a worrier and a huge overthinker. I think the worry I would have had around my own children would have potentially destroyed my mental health. I would have struggled to experience the joy through the fog of constant worry. Story 36. I was bored today and didn't feel great BC of allergies. I woke up and got in my hot tub with coffee. Then I made and ate Vietnamese spring rolls. Then he drank coffee and played a few games. Then I started cooking dinner around 1. I decided I needed to get some yeast to bake bread for dinner. While I was at the store, limes were on sale and I decided I'd make margaritas and bake bread. Then I got in the hot tub with a margarita. Then I relaxed for a while, fed my animals, and had company share my margaritas for about an hour. Then they left and I ate dinner and watched whatever I wanted on TV. I get to do whatever I want, when I want, and I wouldn't change a thing. Story 37. It feels like freedom. A few weekends ago, my partner and I packed up our car with us and our dog and drove a few hours to get some food at this place we heard about. I slept in this morning. Most evenings I make food based solely on adult taste buds. My evenings are mine. I play board games, read books, play video games, do puzzles or crafts, watch sports or streaming shows, movies, and go to bed when I'm sleepy. Or I go out with friends for dinner and go to theater, concerts, comedy shows, or other city happenings. In my life is no kids crying, no fighting, no playing chauffeur to sports and kids' hobbies and play dates. It feels easy, comfortable, calm, cozy, and quiet. It feels like freedom to do what I want, when I want, with whomever I want. It feels fantastic. I've never once regretted not having children. Story 38. Pretty much the majority who don't have kids by this age don't want them, so they probably don't feel sad about it. I would love to have kids though, just because I would love to be a dad. This is why I knew most people in this topic will be positive about this. It is a mindset thing. People who want kids will get them even with IVF, surrogacy, or even adoption. These people will feel sad if they didn't get kids. On the other hand, people who don't want kids just don't want them. They won't feel sad about it. Story 39. It depends on the day. I'm one of the few who wanted kids very much and it just didn't happen in time. Didn't have much luck in the love department. In theory, I could parent alone, but that sounds too hard to me. Or settled for someone to have kids in time. But that was a gamble I wasn't willing to take. And I've seen it go sour for some friends who did. That said, they adore being a parent, just not their parenting partners. It took me a long time to accept it, but now that I have, it is honestly quite freeing. I have times where I feel a tug of envy and grief at not have kids, mostly when I spend time with close friends or family with awesome kids. I'm great with young kids and was a teacher for over a decade. I think I'd have been a good mom, so that pains me. But I also realize there are many things in life, and having kids doesn't have to be the end-all be-all to living a fulfilling life. You can play a parental role to kids in your life and not be a parent. I will say it can be quite lonesome, as it is hard to be excluded from such a major and common life development. Many of my old friendships have faced some because our experiences are now so different. It can be very challenging to connect with other single no-kids folks after a certain age. But I suspect that will even out some as kids leave the nest and adults have more time to themselves again. I do appreciate the ability to do what I want when I want it for the most part. I don't envy the stress and financial pressures of parenting, but the sacred connection and joy and wonder of watching a child grow is a pretty incredible thing. It does feel like something I missed out on. But that said, I don't have to worry about all the hardships that come with being a parent too. And kids don't stay young and sweet forever, and you don't know what your child will be like. Some situations end up very challenging for reasons beyond anyone's control that I certainly would struggle to cope with. Being a dog mom is enough for me. Story 40. It's very sad at times, but I deal with it. The saddest thing is watching other people seemingly easily having the life you wanted. It's especially horrible when you feel you tried especially hard to make it happen, but it was ripped away from you by people with selfish, bad intentions. Bad luck, or in hindsight, perhaps making the wrong decisions and taking risks that didn't work in your favor. Story 41. It feels like freedom and having options and not being permanently in orbit around an entity that consumes money and time like a black hole. I hear some people really like raising children. They're welcome to it, and I hope it goes well for them. It's just that I see the looks on their faces when they don't have their guard up, in the store or whatever. The look of a person who is never not tired, never not worrying like their heart has been transplanted into a wild animal with poor impulse control. Most people my age look way older than I do. I have a childless friend in his 60s who also looks far younger than most of his cohort. Can't help but wonder about that. Story 42. I don't think the cost of being childless is really felt paid at 40 or 50. Those ages are still pretty young by today's standards. A 50-yo might not want to go out as often as a 20-yo, but they still are very able to lead healthy lives with enough social interaction. As someone who deals with end of life often, it's the people who are in their 70s and 80s that are the ones who really might have benefited from building a family. Some people say it's selfish to have a kid for yourself, or that it's overly hopeful to think you'll be friends and close. If you do it exclusively to have someone to take care of you, sure, I can agree with that being selfish. But plenty of people want the closeness that comes with a family. You can kind of get that with siblings and good friends, but a social circle really needs generational diversity, as anyone your age will eventually either die or simply be unable to hang out regularly. Extending your family beyond your generation can create a closeness that I've found to be rarely replicated otherwise. I've seen it, but way less often than I've seen adult children showing real love, care, and affection for an older parent. I myself have always been family-minded, but working in medicine really highlighted the better parts of building a family. And he'll add that even dysfunctional families tend to have some closeness to them. Anecdotal, but I've found parents who don't get along are hated by their kids to be the outlier rather than the norm. Story 43, bittersweet. My life is where and what it is because I was never interested in having kids. I just feel bad that adopting is so difficult. My wife has a bigger draw to have been a mom, but she never wanted to birth a child. I feel like even with here in her early 40s and me being 45, we could be some pretty good parents to a couple kids, but if you're not into creating your own, it's just not as easy. Story 4441 with no kids here. Feels awesome. I love how much freedom I have. Money-wise, it's nice too. One thing that I've noticed as a guy who's single and dating in his 30s and now 40s is that as you get older, being on the same page as your prospective partner about kids becomes more important. When I was dating in my 20s, not wanting kids wasn't really a deal breaker. Now I absolutely wouldn't date a woman unless I knew for a fact that she didn't want kids. Story 45, it's wonderful. I'm fortunate, I think, in that a large chunk of my circle of friends also chose not to have children. So at 47, my partner and I are still spending our Saturdays playing D&D with our friends until 2 a.m., then sleeping until sometime in the afternoon on a Sunday. We have a Cocker Spaniel. He's our fur baby. He's far less stressed than human children. No school run, no helping with homework, no fighting at bedtime, no new school term flu bugs, no having to come up with costumes for World Book Day. We can afford to run 2 cars because we're not spending all of our money on plastic tat and clothes that they grow out of after wearing them twice. My fridge is full of fresh orange juice and tonic for my gin, not a petit falooz or cheese triangle in sight. Christmas is a joy when you don't have to fight for the latest trendy toy. Try to hide the world's biggest pile of pink plastic from impatient little fingers for a month, have to cook dinner for a dozen people, or get up at 6 a.m. Story 46. Honestly, as someone who made the choice, it feels really good. My wife, 46F, and I, 49M, have both worked hard in our careers and made good money. We have been mortgage-free for 3 years now in a nice house, and we take lots of holidays. We have a busy social life and an army of nieces and nephews ranging from 1-year-old babies to their 20s who we spoil and adore. This time next year, we will both be retired, just shy of my 50th birthday. We've decided quality time together before we fall apart, physically or mentally, but hopefully neither, is more important than money now. We decided in our early 20s kids weren't in our plans. Like I said above, we have an army of nieces and nephews who we love dearly, and I think we'd have been amazing parents, but we just didn't have that urge or instinct to have kids. We love doing our own thing, and the freedom our career choices afforded us. I know we are very lucky, and my heart goes out to childless couples who had the choice made for them. I don't agree with anyone who says we're selfish or whatever else it is they say. We aren't kid-hating weirdos, and we pay taxes which contribute to services we'll never use, but that's fine. It was our choice, and we don't ever regret it. I know this thread has been up a while, but I'm happy to answer questions or help anyone who needs to pick the brains of someone in my position. Story 47. It feels great. I don't have debt, never had to deal with kid problems or a messy divorce. I have all of my time to myself, and I do whatever I want whenever I want. It's actually kind of great. I did feel awkward about it earlier in life, though. I do have a niece and nephew that I'm hopefully going to leave a fat inheritance for, which adds a bit of purpose to what I'm doing with my life. Story 48. Amazing. I always worried I'd regret it, but I love it more every day. Being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want. I get enough kid interaction from my friends' kids and nibbling. I get to spend all my time doing what I love. Movies, abs, video games. My house is everything I want it to be. Super quirky. Every room is full character and Insta-worthy. People come over and say my house is the coolest bar in the city. No compromises to be kid-friendly or to be a kid's house. I just started planning retirement with my best friend. We're retiring together with our husbands and a bunch of other friends who were child-free. We're buying a big piece of land in the country with a bunch of folks. It'll be this aging artist commune. We're buying a place in the city too, and we're splitting our time between the country and city. It's pricey, but we've saved up. Our friends with kids can visit and they'll love it. And if someone moves in with kids, we'll be the village. But it's nice to have this freedom to create our dreams to share with someone else, instead of the dream being someone else and living for their dream, if that makes sense. Story 49, I'm in my mid-30s, but I'll tell you, nothing makes me appreciate not having kids like talking to parents. It's always the same thing. Complaint, moan, disastrous thing the child did, complaints from school. I have no time to just relax, then followed by, but it's great, you'll love it when you have kids. I feel like I'm talking to someone months into a MLM scam who's desperate to drag someone else into their pot of misery. Story 50, not 40, but in my 30s as a gay male, it makes me really sad to think I will never know what it feels like to have children of my own. I've always wanted to be a dad. I know there are other options, but financially they feel unattainable. Luckily, I have an amazing husband and 2 dogs that make me very thankful for our little family. Sometimes it is what it is. I try not to think about it. Story 51. I really appreciate these responses exploring the ambiguous nature of the grief ambivalence that can surround this topic. What I've been having trouble lately with is being the only mature human for miles, it seems, that has no offspring, with the exception of people in their early 20s who haven't settled down yet. I work at a place with 50-plus people. All of them have kids except for me. I socialize within a club of hundreds of people. They literally all have kids except for me and a couple of old guys. And families are large here. 3+ kids seems to be the norm. I'm fine when I'm by myself, but increasingly, when I'm out in society, I feel like I'm stunted and freakish somehow. Not to mention excluded from many, many social opportunities because of the lack of children. And I feel for my husband, for whom this is painful as well. Story 52. Late 40s here. I have no strong feelings about not having children yet. My conditions to starting a family is first via a relationship on firm footing, romance, trust, money, etc. Children to me are an extension, a reward, a miracle for establishing a healthy and loving environment for them to grow up in. I understand it is possible for children to be raised in all sorts of situations, but for me, without my conditions being met, I seriously question my ability to give a child, Ren, the best chance for success in life. Story 53. For me, there's this persistent needling in my heart that I'm not doing something I was supposed to do. There is a sense that I've failed at something. I'm not certain that I would feel differently if I had kids. I struggle with a general sense that I failed at life, but I do feel like if I had kids, I'd at least feel like I did something right. I'm 41, married, with no kids and no property, and I continually have to face my best friends who all have great kids and wonderful homes, and it just feels so overwhelmingly bad sometimes. Story 54. There was a huge grieving process. Having to let go of that dream, even if you didn't realize it was a dream that you had, was hard. It's even harder when your biological clock starts screaming at you. I also worry about getting older alone. No one to check and make sure I'm not lying, unable to move on the floor. That really scares me. I've made my peace with the kids thing, but I think it will always be tinged with a bit of sadness and regret. Story 55, pretty good. We can plan holidays for us, impromptu events, weekends away, etc. We're going to Japan next year and no one is screaming to go see Disney or Nintendo or Universal. Just me screaming to see the Formula One. I didn't meet my partner until mid-40s, so us having kids wasn't and isn't on the cards, and it may have been different if we met earlier. Story 56. Most of the time I am content and happy, but sometimes it gets to me when I am someplace quiet and I see parents with small children in an empty grocery store or at the park. I've been a stepdad, and I used to be a part of my siblings' children's lives long ago. I miss that, and I feel a big incompleteness that is hard to describe with words. Those short years where I was in a fatherly position were worth more to me than any money or extra freedom. Story 57. I'm at peace with it. We are mid-50s. Our life is good, and hearing the neighbors' kids, we sometimes look at each other and laugh that we dodged a bullet. Love my nieces and nephews. Loved playing with them when they were kids and really love keeping in contact with them now that they are adults. Had a little moment the other day when I had to redo my will. There's a piece of jewelry that gets handed down to the oldest daughter, so will be mine when Mum passes. I was a little sad when I realized that I don't have an oldest daughter to pass it to, but a niece will do fine. Life often doesn't turn out as you thought it would, but no point having regrets over what might have been. Story 58. I'm 41. I have no children. My only sibling, an older brother, is gay and has no children. The family tree firmly ends with us. That sucks and genuinely is a little depressing. However, I've just booked an holiday to the USA next year, following one to South America this year and Canada next year. Just got a new car, went out and got wasted last week with work colleagues, and I can spend whatever I want on me. That makes life quite good. Story 5955 and best decision I ever made. 21st B-Day gift to myself was a vasectomy. Worked as a union carpenter for 30 years, retired 2 years ago. Have our home here near Chicago, a house and property in Phoenix and a cabin and property in Michigan, all completely paid for. We've been able to travel the entire U.S. as well as have visited 47 different countries. My wife and I can do what we want whenever we want. She also has never had any desire to have children. We both have numerous friends and family with children. We do enjoy spending time with the kids and even occasionally take the nieces and nephews on short vacations with us. But at the end of the day, we enjoy going home by ourselves. Neither one of us have ever felt the desire to be a parent, and we have discussed it many times throughout the years and unanimously agree every time that we're glad we didn't. We live good lives. We help people in need. We do a lot of volunteer work together. When we get older and start needing taken care of, checked in on, if one of the nieces or nephews step up and take the role, we'll probably leave most of what we have to them. If not, everything will be left to a few charities that we have worked with over the years. I think we would have been decent parents. But also, I don't think either one of us would be able to give 100% to being a parent, if that makes sense.